After Lex Luthor discovers that he is dying, he has but one person to turn to, and that is his arch nemesis, Superman. But can Superman help him? Let's find out in this video for Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor. Hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor. This is the complete collected edition. This originally came out in 3 different issues for the DC Black Label, so they are the prestige oversized magazine format. Now, this took a long time to come out, probably just due to the massive amount of work that had to be put into the art. Also, the fact that Mark Waid is doing like half of the DZ comics at the time, but it's finally all out. The collection is or should be out very soon as of the recording of this video. And it's just incredible to, you know, not since Superman Birthright had we seen a story from Mark Waid of this magnitude. So let's talk about the creative team first before we get into the book. This is written by Mark Waid, who, like, I don't even have to name his credits, but he's currently writing Justice League for DC Comics, also doing a lot of different engineering of the whole DC universe. So that's very interesting. We also have legendary artist Bryan Hitch, who can do more superheroes per page than anyone I probably can name. We have inks by Kevin Nolan, colors by David Baron, and letters by Richard Starking. Now, in this issue, Lex Luthor is dying. Despite being Superman's greatest enemy, he reaches out to the Men of Steel, not for revenge, but for help. What follows is a cycle. Lex Luthor is dying. Despite being Superman's greatest enemy, he reaches out to the Men of Steel, not for revenge, but for help. What follows is a philosophical journey across time, space, and memory as Superman races to save the life of the men who have spent a lifetime trying to destroy him. Superman grapples whether his moral code should extend to even someone as irredeemable as Lex Luthor, and of course, Luthor, ever manipulative, sees this moment as a final game, one last chance to prove that he is the superior being. What I will get into a little bit more spoilers, but before that, I wanted to do a little bit of in case you haven't read this, and just a quick shout out to Slim, one of the hosts from the 70mm podcast. It's a movie podcast that I listen to. He reminded me about the existence of this book because, like I said, it took so long in between this book coming out that I wasn't sure about if the collection had been out, if this was finished. But then during the recording of the Superman film episode, he mentioned this, and I went back to check it out, and it is complete. You can check out all 3 issues now as well from Black Label. If you have DC Infinite Ultra, that's how I read it. You can also check it out there. But man, oh man, this book is incredible. Um, Mark Waid has such a great capacity to understand the core of all these characters, and this is overall a very centric story between Clark and Lex, right? Superman and Lex. This is not really about anybody else in the world, but there is a very interesting reflection of, like, how does the world perceive Superman helping Lex Luthor? That's another thing that comes into the fold. There are some twists and turns, especially towards the latter issues, that I think are really fun. But just the idea that Luthor is dying, he has no other hope, and he turns to his worst enemy in the hopes that he will find the cure, but also to test the Men of Steel. Is this something that he will even go through, right? Will the Men of Steel take the time to care for someone that has given him so much grief over the years? And that is really the crux of this story. Like I said, there are later on some twists and turns that make this feel more like a superhero story, but I think what Waid does such an extraordinary job at is bringing us to all these different places. It's almost like a greatest hits of Superman lore while taking Luthor across the strip, right? Because Superman has to turn to people for help. He goes to the Legion of Superheroes in the future. He goes to Wonder Woman, the Mascara. He just really tries everything. He shows Lex his Fortress of Solitude. So I would say this is a Black Label title, so it is out of continuity. It's a very standalone story where you can really take in, a lot of the basics for Superman and the lore still apply, but this is its own world. So like, if you think that, because it's come out like at the moment, Luthor is not really a full bad guy. He's kind of going back into being a bad guy, but he's not a full bad guy. So yeah, all those things, keep in mind it's a very self-contained story, which I think is also great if you're somebody that's kind of coming back into comics. Like maybe you've read some comics in the past, or if you've seen the movies, and you just know how much Luthor and Superman, how big rivals they are. Like this is right there for the taking. Just like to keep going with that. I think this book touches a lot on different themes, like redemption of a person who is on their last days versus the retribution, right? Superman's dilemma of really just like, what are the limits of forgiveness versus justice, especially when it comes to somebody and that's done everything that Luthor has done in this universe. Also, Luthor confronting his own mortality and his legacy. What is he leaving behind other than maybe a name and all those atrocities that he's caused? And then, of course, the fact that humanity and Luthor see Superman as a god, it just really helps. Like, what is the morality of a god if that is the case, right? If Superman truly is that, and then of course truth versus perception, where Superman is a very optimistic character, and while Luthor is very cynical, right? So just representing all the full spectrum of emotions in humanity, and how Superman can feel like a more human character than even Luthor is, right? We just kind of construct all those things around the idea of heroism and villainy. So of course, even as a reader, you go in with a lot of preconceived notions about these characters. Now, let's talk about Bryan Hitch for a little bit, because this book is about 150 pages once you put everything together. But I think one of the advantages of this prestige format, the large, oversized magazine title, is that Bryan Hitch has like so much more room to kind of play with, but also that means that he has a lot more room to fill in the page. And there are some pages, and you'll see some of the art going through the video after it's been fully edited, that Bryan Hitch is just drawing thousands of characters, whole universes, galaxies, a world. Like, it is incredible the amount of detail that Bryan Hitch can put on a page. I think there's still a few pages where I feel like the way that Bryan Hitch does anatomy, it clashes with my perception of what something should look like. So there's a few pages where I'm like, this is not this doesn't look, this looks off to me a little bit. But overall, like, it really works. I'm very impressed. I will always check out a Bryan Hitch book because I know that there's gonna be so much detail put into it. I think it's one of the artists who continues to evolve that comic book house style and try to update it for a more contemporary era, but still has that classic feel. Baron's colors are bright and luminous in a lot of the places, because this is a Superman book. We are following that hope that Luthor has, right? But there are moments that things get dark. The theme and the atmosphere in the book does get a little bit darker, and so Baron's colors tone down. So that's really interesting to explore. We get to see the Phantom Zone, so that's always really cool to see an interpretation of that by an artist, because first of all, the Phantom Zone continues to kind of evolve in the way that it is perceived. So that's really cool. And then, like I said, Mark Waid, going back to that, like, he's able to give us this story of Superman, but also remind us that Superman and Lex were friends as kids. Like, Clark and Lex grew up in Smallville until Lex had this accident that Superman wasn't able to help him with because he was hiding his true identity, which is really the whole premise of Smallville, which is a show that I love. So if you go back and think about that and then contextualize that all this through the story, it'll give you more of an idea of why Superman chooses to help Lex Luthor, because he still has this guilt that's kind of been following him all throughout these years, especially every time that Luthor does something terrible. Superman almost feels like that's kind of on him as well. Like, he feels that he's probably responsible for that. So yeah, I think it's a really great book that's put together. So let me go through a little bit of what happened in each of the issues in case you are one of those people that just wants to know a little bit more before getting into this, um, I will say there's a few other things that I kind of found out throughout my research. This was released through the like I said, the Black Label, which allows it for more mature storytelling, and I think that was really cool. It's very different from some of the current titles in DC. And then, of course, like I said, this is since Birthright, which has been decades ago. Like Mark Waid, this is like his first major work where he's really just focused on Superman. I think a lot of the visuals that Hitch drew on, he brought from the Silver Age imagery, especially when we touch on some of the things that really go back to that Silver Age storytelling of Superman going on in all these kind of goofy adventures. You'll get to see so many Easter eggs throughout the Fortress of Solitude, and I think that's really cool. And this series, of course, kind of continues to pay homages to some of the great stories like All Star Superman and stuff like that, because they kind of resonate in the tone, right? In All Star Superman, Superman is the one who's dying. So I think the idea that the roles are kind of reversed, it's very interesting. All Star Superman also, Superman allows Luthor to feel like his powers to be Superman for a few minutes, which incredibly changes his perception. So all those cool things. I think there's a lot of really neat parallels that I would love to revisit All Star Superman now with this and having seen the movie, to see how all that feels together. Um, all right. So in the first issue, we see that Superman is summoned to by Lex by causing major destruction with this giant robot. But it is Superman's compassion that kind of prevents him from walking away. But in the meanwhile, while this is happening, Luthor is broadcasting the fact that Superman has agreed to help him to the world. And as the issue flashes back to a lot of their key moments when they were kids, which is really interesting. And as we follow a path to the cure, Superman goes to Atlantis, Superman goes to the future, Superman goes to Wonder Woman, the Fortress of Solitude. He goes to the people in the city of Kandor. So like he really looks everywhere. In issue number 2, Superman goes to the Phantom Zone trying to figure out if he can hold Luthor there in some kind of stasis, right? Because in the Phantom Zone, your physical body disappears. So maybe that could help him buy some more time. Um, it is interesting that Luthor continues to not so much manipulate, but really kind of evolve in his game. And in the end of this, Superman doesn't really fully trust Lex, and that is proven almost to be true. So that's an interesting twist. We continue to see flashbacks to their younger selves and develop this not so much a rivalry, just like a really weird friendship that could not be saved. And then in the final issue, it is revealed that there's there was Brainiac behind all this, and that is who. And so now they kind of have to work together while still Luthor is dying. And will one of them have to make the biggest sacrifice, and how that plays out? Also, this is all framed through the fact that Clark is writing a story called The Last Days of Lex Luthor, so that's a really interesting framing device as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really think it was a really cool book that you should go check out, especially if you are really trying to dig into Superman at the time, whether it's because you just seen the movie or you're looking forward to just getting back into comics. I think this is a very good book that will give you a lot of story, will give you a lot of really cool art. It's not perfect by any means. It definitely requires you to like have some buy-in into this idea of Superman being this beacon of like goodness and hope. But I don't mind that. I think Mark Waid knows that that is a very cool version of Superman to explore. So yeah, I really enjoy this. If there's any other Superman stories that you want me to check out or revisit and do a video about, let me know down in the comments. Let me know what is your favorite Superman story. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on Superman, you can either go check out my friends over at the Austin Danger podcast, where I was one of the guests contributing to that discussion, along with my buddy Mike Rappin from the Ivory Comic Books podcast, or you can check out our super full in-depth discussion with Josh and Jeff here on the channel. So make sure to go check that out. If you saw the movie, also let me know what you thought about it. As you can see, I got my bucket, I got my poster behind me, so like I'm very much on board with this Superman. Also, go check out Superman Birthright. These little compact comics, as you can see, I have a stack of them right behind me as well. They're really, really fun. So, as always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff here in the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.